The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, transmitted through every communication array humanity possessed. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the United Earth Command Center, watching the holographic display materialize before the assembled leaders of humanity. The alien figure that appeared was tall, ethereal, with skin that seemed to shimmer between silver and blue. Its 4 arms moved with deliberate grace as it spoke. "I am High Counselor Zethkar of the Galactic Council," the being announced, its voice carrying the weight of authority that spanned star systems. "We address the species known as humans, inhabitants of the 3rd planet in the Sol system." Elena exchanged glances with General Martinez, who stood rigid beside her. Neither had expected this day to come so soon. Humanity had only made contact with the greater galactic community 3 years ago, and most of that time had been spent in careful diplomatic exchanges and cultural learning. "Your species," Zethkar continued, "has been evaluated according to the standard protocols established by the Galactic Council 17,000 cycles ago. We have reviewed your technological development, your social structures, and your aggressive tendencies." The pause hung in the air like a blade about to fall. "It has been determined that humanity poses a significant risk to galactic stability. Your species demonstrates an alarming propensity for violence, rapid technological advancement without corresponding wisdom, and a disturbing lack of respect for established galactic order." Elena felt her heart sink. She had feared this might happen. Humanity's first contact had not gone smoothly. When the exploration vessel Horizon's Edge had encountered the Kethmori scout ship, the aliens had attempted to board without permission. Captain Rodriguez had responded with standard military protocol, resulting in what the galactic community viewed as an unprovoked attack. Therefore, Zethkar's image flickered slightly as the transmission adjusted. "The Galactic Council has voted. Humanity will pay reparations for the damage caused to Council member species and the disruption of galactic peace. The sum is set at 47 billion standard galactic credits, plus an additional service fee of 2 billion credits for administrative costs." General Martinez stepped forward, his weathered face showing barely controlled anger. "Service fee? For what service?" "For the service of allowing your species to continue existing," Zethkar replied without emotion. "The alternative option presented to the Council was complete sterilization of your solar system. This was deemed unnecessarily harsh by a narrow margin." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. Around the command center, other officials shifted uncomfortably. The casual way the alien spoke of genocide made her stomach turn. "You have 1 standard galactic year to produce this payment," Zethkar continued. "Payment must be made in rare mineral resources, particularly trilithium, quantum crystals, and processed neutronium. Earth's natural resources have been cataloged by our preliminary surveys and are deemed sufficient for this purpose." "Our preliminary surveys?" Elena found her voice. "You've been surveying our planet without permission?" "Permission is not required from pre-council species," the High Counselor replied. "The surveys indicate that complete extraction of your planet's core metals and rare earth elements should provide approximately 60% of the required payment. The remaining 40% can be obtained through the harvest of your system's asteroid belt and the processing of your outer planet's atmospheric resources." Elena realized with growing horror what they were describing. "You're talking about strip mining our entire solar system." "Correct. Your species will, of course, need to relocate. We have identified several suitable worlds in the Outer Rim territories where you may establish colonies. These worlds are currently uninhabited due to their harsh conditions, but they should prove adequate for a species of your resilience." General Martinez's hand moved instinctively toward his sidearm before he caught himself. "And if we refuse?" For the first time, something like amusement flickered across the alien's features. "Refusal is not an option under Galactic Council law. Species that fail to comply with Council edicts are classified as rogue civilizations and dealt with accordingly. The Korthani Collective attempted to refuse a similar judgment 2 centuries ago. Their homeworld is now a memorial asteroid field. Elena felt the weight of 8 billion human lives pressing down on her shoulders. How do we know that this council of yours has the authority to make these demands? An excellent question, Zethkar replied. Perhaps a demonstration would be instructive. The hologram shifted, showing what appeared to be a view from space. Elena recognized the distinctive shape of Earth's continents below, but something was wrong with the image. A shadow was falling across the planet, but there were no clouds large enough to cast such darkness. Currently positioned in your system's outer asteroid belt are 47 Council dreadnoughts, Zethkar explained as the view shifted to show massive, crystalline vessels that seemed to bend light around them. Each ship was easily the size of Manhattan, bristling with weapons that defied easy description. Each vessel carries sufficient firepower to crack your planet's crust. They are accompanied by 300 support craft and a full terraforming fleet, should relocation become necessary. Elena's mind raced, calculating possibilities, looking for any way out of this nightmare scenario. What assurance do we have that you'll honor your agreement, that you won't simply destroy us after we've paid? You have the word of the Galactic Council, Zethkar replied. We have maintained galactic peace for over 20,000 years. Compliance with our edicts ensures your species' survival and eventual integration into galactic society. Non-compliance ensures extinction. The transmission began to flicker, indicating it was nearly over. You will receive detailed extraction quotas and relocation timelines within 1 rotation of your planet. We suggest you begin preparations immediately. The clock, as your species says, is ticking. The hologram vanished, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Elena looked around at the faces of Earth's leadership. President Chen sat with her head in her hands. The Secretary General of the United Nations stared at the empty space where the alien had been. Military commanders from every major nation stood frozen, realizing that all their weapons, all their strategies, were utterly meaningless against the forces arrayed against them. Options, Elena said quietly, trying to keep her voice steady. We could try to negotiate, suggested Dr. Reyes from the Science Council. Perhaps offer to pay in installments or provide some other form of compensation. With what? General Martinez asked bitterly. They want to gut our entire solar system. Where exactly are we supposed to live while we're mining every planet down to bedrock? Maybe we could appeal to other council members, President Chen said, lifting her head. Surely not all of them support this madness. Elena shook her head. You heard him. This was voted on by the entire council. Even if some members opposed it, they're not going to risk their own positions to help us. The room fell silent again as the full magnitude of their situation sank in. Humanity had reached for the stars and found themselves utterly outmatched by forces beyond their comprehension. There is one other option, a quiet voice said from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see Admiral Sarah Chen, the president's sister and commander of Earth's small but growing space fleet. She was a small woman, but her eyes held a hardness that came from years of military service. We fight, she said simply. General Martinez let out a bitter laugh. With what, Admiral? You saw those ships. We've got maybe 24 vessels capable of interplanetary travel, and most of those are converted cargo haulers. They have dreadnoughts that could probably take on our entire fleet single-handedly. Maybe, Admiral Chen replied, but they're making one critical assumption. Which is? They assume we'll behave like every other species they've bullied into submission. They assume we'll look at their overwhelming force and surrender without a fight. She stepped forward, and Elena could see something dangerous in her expression. They've never fought humans before. Elena felt a flicker of something she hadn't expected, hope. Not much, but enough to keep her from despair. What are you suggesting, Admiral? I'm suggesting we give them exactly what they asked for. Admiral Chen replied with a cold smile. They want an answer to their demand. I think it's time we gave them one. As the meeting broke up and Earth's leaders dispersed to their respective nations and departments, Elena found herself thinking about that single word that had changed everything when humanity first encountered the Keth Mori. Captain Rodriguez had been criticized for his aggressive response, but Elena was beginning to wonder if perhaps humanity's reputation for violence might be the only thing that could save them now. Outside the command center windows, she could see the lights of the city below. Billions of people going about their lives, unaware that their entire world hung in the balance. Soon, everyone would know. Soon, humanity would have to choose between submission and annihilation. But as Admiral Chen had said, they had never fought humans before. Perhaps it was time to remind the galaxy why that might have been a mistake. 3 months after the Galactic Council's ultimatum, the world had changed beyond recognition. Elena stood in what used to be the Vehicle Assembly Building at Kennedy Space Center, now converted into the largest military production facility Earth had ever seen. The sound of construction filled the air as thousands of workers labored around the clock, transforming civilian infrastructure into instruments of war. "Status report," she called out as Admiral Chen approached, her uniform bearing new insignia that marked her as Supreme Commander of the newly formed Terra Defense Force. "Better than expected, worse than we hoped," Chen replied with characteristic bluntness. "We've managed to retrofit 67 civilian vessels for combat operations. Most are mining ships and cargo haulers, but they'll carry weapons now. The real breakthrough came from the Martian colonies." Elena raised an eyebrow. The Mars colonies had always been somewhat independent, focusing on terraforming research and resource extraction. "What did they contribute?" "Everything," Chen said with a grim smile. "Turns out, when you tell people they're about to be homeless, they get remarkably motivated. The Martian Mining Consortium has converted their entire operation. Instead of extracting resources for Earth, they're now building the largest mobile weapons platform in human history." She gestured to a massive holographic display showing the red planet. Strange structures had appeared around Mars's orbital space, connected by a web of scaffolding and energy conduits. "They're calling it Ares Station. Basically, they've turned the planet's largest moon, Phobos, into a weapon." Elena stared at the display. That's insane." "Insane enough that it might work," Chen agreed. "The Martians figured out how to mount our most powerful fusion reactors inside the moon's core. They've essentially created a planet-killer missile. It'll only get one shot, but that shot will pack the energy equivalent of a small star going supernova. The Galactic Council will see it coming long before it reaches them." "Maybe. But while they're dealing with Phobos, our real plan goes into effect." Elena followed Chen to another section of the display, this one showing Earth's orbital space, where once there had been peaceful research stations and communication satellites, now bristled a ring of weapons platforms and defensive installations. "We can't match their technology," Chen continued, "but we can match their brutality. Every major city on Earth now has underground bunkers capable of housing the entire population. If they want to crack our planet, they'll have to work for it." "And our answer to their ultimatum?" Chen's expression hardened. "We've prepared a response. Ambassador Harrison will deliver it to the Council in 2 days." Elena had met Ambassador Harrison several times. He was a career diplomat, known for his calm demeanor and skill at negotiation. What's he going to tell them? The truth. Before Elena could ask what that meant, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed as automated systems announced an incoming priority transmission. Elena and Chen rushed to the main communications center, where technicians were already working to establish a secure connection. The holographic display activated, showing a familiar figure, High Counselor Zethkar appeared, his forearms moving in what Elena had learned was a gesture of irritation among his species. "Human leadership," he began without preamble. "Our long-range sensors have detected significant military buildup in your system. This was not part of our agreement." Admiral Chen stepped forward before Elena could respond. "There was no agreement, Counselor. You issued demands. We're preparing our response." "Your response is irrelevant," Zethkar replied coldly. "You will cease all military preparation immediately and begin resource extraction as ordered. Our timeline has been accelerated. You now have 6 standard months to produce the required payment." 6 months? Elena felt anger surge through her. "You said we had a year." "Circumstances have changed. Other council members have expressed concern about your species' aggressive tendencies. There is growing support for the sterilization option. The shortened timeline is a compromise to demonstrate your compliance." Chen moved closer to the display, her voice deadly quiet. "And if we refuse?" "Then you will join the Korthani Collective in extinction," Zethkar said matter-of-factly. "Your military preparations are impressive for a primitive species, but ultimately meaningless. We have monitored your progress. Your largest weapons possess perhaps 1% of the destructive capability of a single Council dreadnought. You cannot win." "Maybe not," Chen replied. "But we can make you work for it." For the first time since their initial contact, Elena saw something like uncertainty flicker across the alien's features. "Explain." "You want our resources? Come and take them. But understand that every ton of metal you extract will cost you. Every ship you send into our space will face resistance. We won't go quietly into the night just because you think you're stronger than us." Zethkar's expression returned to its previous cold neutrality. "Very well. If you insist on this futile gesture, we shall accommodate you. Our fleet will arrive at your homeworld in 4 standard months. Extraction will begin immediately upon arrival. Resistance will be crushed." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the command center in tense silence. "Well," Chen said after a moment, "I guess that answers that." Over the following weeks, Elena witnessed humanity's transformation in ways she had never imagined possible. Every major corporation had converted their production lines to military applications. Scientists who had spent their careers studying medicine or agriculture now focused on weapons research. Children learned evacuation procedures alongside their regular lessons. But it wasn't just the military preparations that impressed her. It was the spirit that had emerged among humanity as word of the Galactic Council's demands spread. Instead of panic, there was determination. Instead of despair, there was defiance. She saw it in the face of Dr. Patel, the elderly physicist who had volunteered to work on the Phobos project, despite being well past retirement age. "My grandchildren deserve to grow up on the world their ancestors built," he had told her. "If I have to die to ensure that, so be it." She saw it in the messages that poured in from every corner of Earth. Farmers offering to convert their equipment into weapons. Teachers organizing evacuation plans for their schools. Ordinary people faced with impossible odds, choosing to fight rather than surrender. The most surprising development came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, a xenobiologist who had been part of the first contact team, requested a private meeting with Elena and Admiral Chen. "I've been analyzing the Council's communications," she said, spreading holographic data across the conference table. "There's something they're not telling us." Elena leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "Look at their language patterns. Their body language during transmissions, even the timing of their ultimatum," Warren explained. "I think the Galactic Council is afraid of us." Chen laughed humorlessly. "Afraid? They have a fleet that could turn Earth into space dust." "Militarily, yes, they're superior. But think about it from their perspective. They've maintained galactic peace for 20,000 years by intimidating species into submission. It works because every species they encounter eventually backs down. But we're not backing down. Elena began to understand. You think our resistance threatens their authority? More than that. I think other species are watching to see what happens here. The Council can't afford to let us succeed, but they also can't afford to look weak. That's why they shortened our timeline. They want this resolved quickly, before other species start getting ideas. So what do you suggest? Chen asked. Warren smiled grimly. We make sure the entire galaxy knows that humanity didn't go quietly. When they come for us, we give them a fight they'll remember for the next 20,000 years. As the meeting ended and Elena returned to her duties coordinating Earth's defense, she found herself thinking about the human concept of Pyrrhic victory. They might not be able to defeat the Galactic Council, but perhaps they could inflict enough damage to make other species reconsider their own submissions. 2 days later, Ambassador Harrison delivered humanity's official response to the Galactic Council. Elena wasn't present for the transmission, but she heard about it from Admiral Chen later. How did it go? She asked. Chen's expression was unreadable. Harrison delivered our message exactly as planned, short and to the point. What did we tell them? Chen looked out through the command center windows at the lights of the construction crews working through the night, building humanity's last desperate defenses against impossible odds. We told them no, she said simply. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. One word. After all their preparations, all their defiance, all their desperate hope, humanity's answer to the Galactic Council's demands had been summed up in a single, simple word. And their response? They're coming, Chen replied. All of them. The entire Council fleet. They'll be here in 73 days. Elena nodded, feeling oddly calm. Humanity had made its choice. They would face extinction as a free species rather than live as slaves. It might not be victory, but it was something more precious than survival. It was defiance. The Galactic Council fleet emerged from hyperspace exactly 73 days after Ambassador Harrison's transmission, appearing at the edge of the Sol system like a metallic storm cloud. Elena stood in the Terra Defense Force Command Center, watching the tactical display update as sensors counted the incoming vessels. Final count? Admiral Chen asked, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. 147 dreadnoughts, over 800 support vessels, and... The sensor technician paused, recalculating. Admiral, they've brought the entire Third Enforcement Fleet. This isn't just a punitive expedition. This is a full galactic armada. Elena felt her stomach sink. Intelligence estimates had suggested 40 to 60 ships at most. What appeared on their screens represented enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. Signal from the Council flagship, Communications Officer Rodriguez announced. The main display shifted to show High Counselor Zethkar, flanked by 2 other alien figures Elena didn't recognize. Behind them, the bridge of their vessel stretched impossibly far, filled with beings from dozens of different species. Humans of soul, Zethkar began. His forearms, spread in a gesture Elena had learned, meant finality among his people. You have chosen defiance. You have answered our lawful demands with a single word of refusal. This is unprecedented in 20 millennia of galactic governance. Admiral Chen stepped forward. Counselor, we're prepared to negotiate. No, Zethkar cut her off. And Elena noticed that several other alien figures on the bridge shifted uncomfortably. You have already given us your answer. We are here to demonstrate the consequences of that answer to the galaxy. The display shifted to show the Council fleet spreading throughout the solar system. Squadrons of dreadnoughts took position near each planet, while smaller vessels began establishing what looked like containment perimeters. Citizens of the Milky Way, Zethkar continued, and Elena realized this transmission was being broadcast beyond Earth. Observe what becomes of species that defy the natural order. Witness the price of chaos and rebellion. The transmission ended, but Elena noticed something strange. Instead of immediately opening fire, the Council fleet had stopped moving. They hung in space like a vast spider web, waiting. "Why aren't they attacking?" Elena asked. "Because they're putting on a show," Admiral Chen replied grimly. "This isn't just about destroying us anymore. This is about making an example that will prevent other species from ever saying no." Across the system, humanity's defenders took their positions. The converted mining ships and cargo haulers looked pitifully small against the Council dreadnoughts, but Elena felt pride watching them hold formation. Nobody was running. Nobody was surrendering. The first shot came from the Council fleet 3 hours later. A dreadnought near Jupiter fired a single beam of coherent energy that struck one of humanity's orbital defense platforms. The platform simply vanished, converted to plasma in an instant. "Return fire, all vessels," Chen ordered. What followed was unlike anything in recorded history. Human ships, outgunned by factors that defied calculation, charged directly at vessels 10 times their size. The mining ship Prospector's Dream rammed a Council destroyer, both vessels disappearing in a nuclear fireball. The converted cargo hauler New Horizon held position against a dreadnought until its hull melted, but not before its crew managed to cripple the alien ship's engines. Elena watched the tactical display with a mixture of horror and pride as humanity's tiny fleet threw itself against impossible odds. Ship after ship winked out of existence, but each death cost the Council dearly. "Admiral," the communications officer called out urgently, "we're receiving transmissions from outside the system, multiple sources." "From who?" "Unknown, but they're using old Korthani frequency bands." Elena felt her breath catch. The Korthani had been the species the Council had exterminated for refusing their demands 2 centuries ago. Their homeworld had been turned into an asteroid field as a warning to others. "Put it through," Chen ordered. The display crackled with static, then cleared to show a figure that made Elena's heart skip. It was humanoid, but clearly alien, with scaled skin and large, compound eyes. Behind the figure, she could see the bridge of a vessel that looked nothing like Council ships. "Terra Defense Force," the alien said in heavily accented but understandable English. "This is Captain Mordak of the Korthani Resistance Fleet. We have monitored your confrontation with the Council." Elena and Chen exchanged glances. The Korthani still existed? "Captain," Chen responded, "we were told your species was extinct." "The Council wishes this to be believed," Mordak replied, with what might have been a smile. "They destroyed our homeworld, yes, but many of our people survived in hidden colonies. For 200 years, we have waited for another species to show the courage to resist. Today, you have given us hope." The transmission shifted to show space outside the solar system. Elena gasped. Hundreds of ships were emerging from hyperspace, vessels from dozens of different species, all converging on the Sol system. "The word has spread throughout the galaxy," Mordak continued. "Humanity said no to the Council. One simple word, but it has shattered 20,000 years of fear. Today, we all say no." On the main tactical display, Elena watched as the space around Earth filled with ships. Not just Korthani vessels, but others she didn't recognize. Species that had supposedly been integrated into the galactic community, but who had apparently been hiding their true feelings about Council rule. The tide of battle began to shift. A Korthani heavy cruiser engaged a Council dreadnought, its unfamiliar weapons tearing through shields that had seemed impenetrable moments before. Other alien vessels flanked Council formations, using tactics and technologies the Council hadn't seen in centuries. "Impossible," came Zethkar's voice over the communications array. though Elena wasn't sure if he was transmitting deliberately or if they had hacked into council frequencies. The Korth Ani were eliminated. The other species are loyal council members. No, came another voice, this one from a being Elena didn't recognize. We were hiding, waiting. You taught the galaxy to fear you, but you never taught them to love you. Today, we remember what freedom tastes like. The battle raged for 18 hours. Elena lost count of the ships destroyed on both sides, but gradually, impossibly, the Council fleet began to retreat. Not destroyed, but damaged badly enough that their commanders apparently decided the cost of victory was too high. When the shooting finally stopped, Elena found herself standing in a command center that had gone dead silent except for the hum of computers and life support systems. Through the windows, she could see the lights of rescue ships heading out to recover survivors from the battle. "Status report," Admiral Chen called out, her voice hoarse from hours of shouting orders. "Council fleet is withdrawing to minimum safe distance," the tactical officer reported. "Estimate 60% of their force still operational, but they're holding position just inside the heliopause. Our forces? 43% casualties among our fleet. Orbital defense platforms are at 20% operational status. But Admiral..." The officer paused, looking at readings that seemed impossible. "We have over 2,000 Allied vessels in system now, species from across the galaxy. They're requesting permission to establish permanent defense installations." Elena felt tears running down her face. They had done it. Not just survived, but actually won. Humanity's single word of defiance had sparked the first successful resistance to Galactic Council authority in 20,000 years. "Incoming transmission from the Council flagship," Communications Officer Rodriguez announced. The display activated to show Zethkar, but the High Counselor looked very different than he had at the beginning of the battle. His ceremonial robes were torn, and one of his 4 arms hung uselessly at his side. Behind him, the bridge was clearly damaged, with several stations dark and debris floating in the artificial gravity field. "This is not over," Zethkar said, his voice lacking its former authority. "The Council will not allow this rebellion to spread. We will return with greater force." Admiral Chen stepped forward, and Elena was surprised to see her smiling. "Counselor, you're welcome to try. But I think you'll find that the galaxy has changed in the past day. You no longer rule through fear alone." "You have doomed yourselves," Zethkar replied. "The peace we maintained will crumble. War will consume the galaxy. Species will destroy each other without Council guidance." "Maybe," Chen acknowledged, "but at least they'll destroy each other as free beings, not as slaves." The transmission ended, and Elena watched as the Council fleet began moving toward the edge of the system. Not in retreat exactly, but clearly withdrawing to reassess their position. Over the following weeks, as the full scope of what had happened became clear, Elena found herself at the center of a galactic revolution. Species that had been subjugated for millennia began declaring independence. Ancient grievances against the Council surfaced on hundreds of worlds. The carefully maintained order that had ruled the galaxy was cracking. Captain Mordak visited Earth in person 2 months after the battle, his ship joining the growing fleet of free vessels that now protected the Sol system. Elena met with him in what had once been the United Nations building, now transformed into the headquarters of the new Galactic Freedom Alliance. "You asked us once how we knew the Council had the authority to make their demands," Mordak said, his compound eyes reflecting the light from the windows. "The answer is simple. They had authority because nobody ever said no before." Elena nodded, understanding. "One word." "One word that changed everything," Mordak agreed. "My people have a saying. The strongest chains are made of fear, and fear is broken by courage, no matter how small." Humanity showed the galaxy that the chains could be broken. As Elena looked out the window at the ships from dozens of species sharing Earth's orbital space, she reflected on how much had changed since that Tuesday morning when the Council's demands arrived. Humanity had been given an ultimatum: submit or die. They had chosen a third option that hadn't been offered: resist. And in choosing resistance, they had reminded the galaxy that freedom, once lost, could always be reclaimed by those brave enough to say no. The Galactic Council still existed, still controlled much of known space, but they no longer ruled alone and unchallenged. The word that humanity had given them, simple, defiant, uncompromising, had become a rallying cry that echoed across the stars. No. Sometimes, Elena thought, the most powerful weapons weren't energy beams or quantum torpedoes. Sometimes, the most powerful weapon in the universe was just the courage to refuse.